Today I'm going to walk you through my new book, The Modern Pioneer Cookbook, chapter by chapter, so you can see exactly what's in it. Plus, I have a few other things to talk to you about. Number one, what is this spiral-bound copy of my cookbook all about? And number two, the curriculum that I created for my cookbook. This is perfect for educating grades K through 12 on how to make traditional foods, skills that are going to last them a lifetime. It's 250 pages, and it's totally free, no email required. And I have one other thing to share with you. So what are all these things popping up online saying the Modern Pioneer Cookbook or the Modern Pioneer Cookbook Workbook? What exactly are those about? I'll fill you in, so stay tuned. Hi, sweet friends. I'm Mary, and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferments, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning how to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, consider subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Many of you have shared with me that you would like to put my new book, The Modern Pioneer Cookbook, on your wish list or to give it as a gift, but you've not had a chance to look at it in the bookstore, and you'd like to see more of the book than what's available to you when you look at it online. So I'm going to take a few minutes to walk you through and show you each chapter so you can see exactly what's in the book to make up your mind about whether or not you'd like to add it to your kitchen collection, and I think you will, or if you'd like to give it to someone as a Christmas gift. Well, this is my book. It's the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, and it's printed by Random House for their DK imprint. And if you're at all familiar with DK books, you know that they do a lovely job. So when you open the book, this is the first thing that you'll see is basically just the title page with a picture of one of my Dutch ovens with the little chicken on top. And if you've seen some of my recipe videos, you know that I have used that Dutch oven from time to time. I will share with you that writing this book was really a labor of love for you. I wanted to create a manual that would walk you step by step by step, almost as though I was in the kitchen with you, holding your hand, taking you on this traditional foods journey as you create your traditional foods kitchen. Pretty much all the foods that you see in here are foods that I made right here when my editor, the photographer, and a food stylist were in my kitchen for about a week. And I'll share a little behind the scenes information with you that you might find kind of fun. Because you might say, as you look through the book, if you have it at home or if you've had a chance to look through it, but for those of you who are seeing it here for the first time online, you will see that there's often pictures very much of my kitchen that you're used to seeing when I make my videos here on YouTube. But sometimes when you see food that's placed down on a particular surface or something, you might say, well, that doesn't really look like Mary's kitchen. That doesn't look like a background in Mary's kitchen. And I'm going to give you a little behind the scenes tip. The photographer, and I guess this is the case with all photographers, they're exceptionally professional. And so that a book has some variety and not every single food is just photographed on my kitchen tile, they bring a lot of backgrounds. And those backgrounds were set up right here on my kitchen table. It was quite something going through the process. And they have a whole host of backgrounds, and the photographer and the food stylist work together to decide which backgrounds they think might look the most lovely with the food I've prepared, and really kind of make the food for you, looking at the picture, really, as they say, pop. Now, the next thing you're going to come across is the table of contents. And how I've broken out this book is to really take you on a journey, on a traditional foods journey. The first chapter is called The Modern Pioneer, where I share a little bit about my own personal story and how I came to making traditional foods. And I also walk you through all about why it's important to eat seasonally, really looking back at how our ancestors ate and how they prepared foods. There's also a lovely picture of my family, which I'm very proud of. Here I am with my sweet husband, Ted, and our wonderful son, Ben. I couldn't do any of this without them. I have written a lot. This is a cookbook you can really read. It's not just, I just don't throw recipes at you without a lot of teaching beforehand and a lot of explanation. Here I talk about what it means to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, and I've got little sidebars like this with tips on the things that our ancestors did, what we can learn from our ancestors. Then I go on and talk about what is a traditional foods kitchen. I think this is exceptionally interesting if you're at the very beginning of your journey, but there's also a lot of information in here if you are an experienced traditional foods cook. It just brings me so much joy when I hear from many of you who say, you've been cooking all your life, but you've learned so much being on this traditional foods journey, and that brings a lot of joy to my heart. So I talk about the importance of eating seasonally, staying on budget, and then we just forge ahead and we go ahead. Here I show you where I talk about equipping the traditional foods kitchen, and I really give you some very basic ideas on what you might need. And chances are, most of us have the things we need to create our traditional foods kitchen, because our ancestors, our pioneer ancestors, the real people, they didn't have a lot. And we don't need a lot. So I just have a short little list there. And then, because we are modern pioneers in the kitchen and we do have electricity available to us, I do talk about various appliances that you want to think about adding to your kitchen. And again, a lot of it's add little by little over time. You really don't need a lot to get started with this. And then I walk you through talking about what exactly a Four Corners pantry is and how to go about stocking it. And again, you stock your Four Corners pantry over time. The traditional foods journey is not something you do overnight. You want to be successful at this, and you want this to last once you implement these different skills. And so take your time, add to your pantry little by little, and learn the skills for properly preparing food little by little. And then I wrap up this chapter with the information on how to roast a whole chicken. And that's the chicken that's right on the front cover here. The next chapter, chapter 2, is all about bone broth. And I basically give you a nice overview about what's involved in making bone broth. I've got a master recipe for you on making bone broth. And as you see, there's a lot to read. I've given you a lot of information to help you really be a success on this traditional foods journey. So then we've got some beef bone broth here, and then we move on with chicken broth, and so on and so forth. This is the beautiful skin bone broth. This is the one that's made with pork. So I think that you'll find this very helpful, that each one, we've got bits and bobs, and each one comes with a lot of information. And then I think those of you who have the book have told me how pleased you've been with the typeset, that it's very easy to read and the print is a good size. And that makes me very happy. The cook's notes, they're a little smaller, but they're sort of just little bits of information that may help you. They're basically, in many cases, especially being here on YouTube for 5 years and making videos, I've collected many questions over the years from you, and I've included answers. I hope that I've answered them well in comments, but I've also included a lot of those questions here with answers, so that now you have everything in one place, in one book. From bone broth, we move into chapter 3, which I call the skinny on fats, excuse the pun. But in this chapter, I show you how to render fats. And I go over what is beef tallow, what is leaf lard, what is schmaltz, and I go into a lot of detail you'll find this in every chapter. I have a lot of sections where I say frequently asked questions. And this, in addition to the cook's notes, gives you a lot of good information to help you as you're implementing these recipes. A lot of questions I get are, can you eat the cracklings that you make when you're rendering fat? Should you add water or not? These are very important questions, and so I wanted to make sure to include those in the cookbook. So you have everything in one place, one reference manual. And here's some rendering fat. Oh, this is the tallow. And so I think you're going to really enjoy this and learning how to, here's some schmaltz. It's a great picture. And so I think that you'll find all of this very, very helpful. Then chapter 4, I call the homemade dairy. And this is where we make all kinds of dairy. Now, because this is a traditional foods kitchen where we make the bulk of things homemade, but where our ultimate goal in so many instances to ultimately get to where we're making and consuming more cultured dairy, say, than cooked dairy, just like with when we get to the home baker section, we start with quick breads and yeasted breads, but our ultimate goal is to get more in the habit of making a sourdough starter and making sourdough bread and so on and so forth. So that's what I do with most of these chapters. I take you on a journey to make things easy for you so that you will have success and build your skills before moving on to something else. And so I've got a lot of things in here you're going to enjoy. I've got how to make yogurt, homemade yogurt. I've got sort of a mock cream cheese that's very easy to make. And I think that you'll really enjoy that. I know that's been a real hit on my YouTube channel. That video has, gosh, well over 1 million views. You've all been real happy with that. But I don't leave out those of you who are able to get raw milk. I show you how to clabber it. Many of you had asked about that. It's very easy to do. And I often recommend, when it comes to raw milk, to clabber it as opposed to using it to make yogurt. It's better to use pasteurized or ultra-pasteurized milk to make yogurt and add some good nutrition back to it. Raw milk is already so wonderfully rich in nutrition, it's better to just clabber it and then eat it like that. And I've got milk kefir in here. And I want to mention the milk kefir, all of these recipes have very attainable ingredients. The only one in which you have to source something that may not be readily available at your grocery store are the grains that are required to make milk kefir or kefir, depending on how you say it. But other than that, I've tried to keep this very easy. But I love kefir, so I wanted to have that recipe in the cookbook for you. And it's just such a versatile cultured dairy beverage. But know that everything else you can find, none of the ingredients in here are odd or unique or gourmet, nothing like that. They're all easy to find at your grocery store. Or if you have a local rancher in your area where you can get bones, today there's plenty of bones available at the grocery store. If you have a local dairy where you get your milk, that's great too. If you can get fruits and vegetables at the farmer's market, all of that's wonderful. But all of these things can be sourced at your local grocery store in their whole food form and then used to make various things homemade. And here I'm showing you how to make clarified butter and ghee and brown butter, which is a wonderful ingredient for using in baked goods. And I go into what the difference is between ghee and clarified butter. So there's just a lot. I talk about how to culture butter and how to make real buttermilk, real cultured buttermilk, not just the buttermilk like what they sell at the grocery store, which is just a cultured dairy. It's not actually real buttermilk, the water that comes off of or is a byproduct of making butter. So I talk about that and what to do with it, and I think you'll enjoy that. Then I've got how to make homemade cottage cheese. This is so easy to make. And once you make homemade cottage cheese, you're never going to want to buy store-bought cottage cheese again. And then chapter 5, we go on to pickling and fermenting. So I start you off with how to pickle vegetables, and then I move on. And you see, I've got a lot of verbiage here, a lot for you to read, to educate yourself on all of this so that you can truly be an expert. Then I've got a word on salt. We talk about what's the best kind of salt to use, both for pickling and fermenting. And I start you very easy with just some pickled vegetables. They're delicious. You can basically use any kind of vegetables you have in your refrigerator, and you can make wonderful pickled vegetables. And then that helps you build your skills so that you can move on to making fermented vegetables. And here I've got the recipe for sauerkraut. Let's see what else we've got in here. Always crisp fermented dill pickle spears. These are very easy to make, and I share all the tips and tricks for how to keep them crisp naturally. And I've got sweet and sour red cabbage. I've got giardiniera, the Italian fermented vegetables. I love these. I grew up with these. My mother, as I've shared with you, is of Northern Italian heritage. We always had giardiniera in our refrigerator. That is absolutely wonderful. I've got some carrots, some fermented ginger carrots that are wonderful. So, and always lots of cook's notes. I love it, and it was, my editor paid me the highest compliment when he said that he had never worked on a book like this, one that was so detailed and provided so much information for the reader who truly wanted to create these types of old-fashioned traditional foods. And he said just very unique in general, the foods we're making, but all of the plethora of information that I shared with him, and I'll give you a little backstory on all of that. My book originally was going to be smaller with less pages, but my editor said that he was so pleased that I shared all, because I really put my heart and soul into this. I wanted to share so much with you. I'm so passionate about keeping these traditional cooking skills alive. So I really poured my heart into it. And if you have the book, let me know in the comments if I came through, if I met my goal of really giving you all the information you needed. Tell me in the comments if you've been happy with the book. Something I've been very pleased to read are the comments over on Amazon. You've all been so kind and generous in the wonderful comments you've shared that you're really happy with the book, and it is more than you expected. But the page count for the cookbook was increased twice because I did have so much to share, and my editor said that the information was so great that he didn't want it to be lost. And so he was able to get the page count and the book enlarged 2 times, so that was wonderful. Now, I also have a recipe in here that I'm so proud to share with you, and it's a fermented fruit and mustard chutney. It's a mostarda de frutta fermentata, and it's an Italian dish. My mother made this a lot when I was growing up, and it's usually served with, like to help digestion, with like meals that may have a lot of heavy meats in them, and it's really tasty. So I was happy to share that with you. Chapter 6, as I mentioned earlier, is called The Home Baker, and there's a lot in here because I told you we walk you through from start to finish. I talk all about quick breads, I talk all about yeasted breads, I talk about why I like no-knead breads, and I go into a lot of detail about sourdough starters and sourdough bread. And I have a recipe in here to start you out, if you're especially new to home baking, is what I call the Oregon Trail Pioneer Brown Bread. And this was a bread that, it's very similar to a soda bread, and it's a bread that the Irish immigrants made when they were on the Oregon Trail. So I think you'll enjoy that. I share a lot of history about some of these recipes, and I think that you will enjoy reading that. Also, I did include, I know so many of you are crazy for this bread, the super soft, no-knead sandwich bread, that when you make that dough, you never think it's going to bake up into something so delicious, but it does. And this, I would say, I'll have to check, but I think this is my most popular recipe on YouTube. I think it's got like well over 2 million views now. It's very, very popular because it's so easy to make. You mix it up, throw it in the pan, let it rise, and you don't even have to let it rise much. You don't want it to crown or anything like that, just to the rim of the pan, pop it in the oven, and you're going to bake up a beautiful sandwich bread. Then I have a really detailed introduction to sourdough. And I talk about, this is a great picture. This was funny. they wanted to get a picture in my kitchen when my starter was really at its peak. And when it hit this part, I forget exactly what we were doing, but I basically called out, "Stop the presses!" We got to get a picture of the starter. So I enjoy sharing some of the behind the scenes things with you and what went on, when we were working on photographing the book. It was a lot of fun. I couldn't ask for, just the nicest editor in the world, couldn't ask for better. And both the photographer and the food stylist, they were just wonderful. Two lovely ladies that just made me feel like $1,000,000. They're just all three wonderful people. So this, I've got the Baker's No Knead sourdough boule, just how to make a basic no knead bread, that's shaped like a boule. I think we've got a picture in here. Lots of detail on how to do that, lots of cook's notes. I don't leave you hanging. I think I pretty much, here's a picture of one of the breads. I show you how to bake with just plain bread, all-purpose or bread flour. I show you how to bake with einkorn. I show you how to bake with spelt, the ancient grains. And so I think that, sorry if I'm a little out of the frame here, I think you're going to really, really enjoy learning how to make sourdough bread. And I think I've really accomplished making it easy. I also share recipes with what to do with your sourdough discard. Now, in the section on sourdough, I do talk about how to save your starter if you don't want to be in a situation where you're creating discard. But I have to be very honest with you, I love my discard. There's so much you can do with discard that makes life so easy. And if you do like to have different ideas for how to use sourdough discard in your meals, you're going to love this book, because I have it not only here in baking recipes, but later on in making some of the comfort foods. I talk about how to use some of your sourdough discard to make a topping for a particular casserole, which I think it's really delicious, and it's so cute. The very first time I made it for my husband, he said, "Oh, you can make this anytime." So here I've got some biscuits made with sourdough discard. And let's see what else we've got. Oh, these are wonderful. I have slice and bake sourdough discard crackers. You roll these into, if you've ever seen those slice and bake cookies at the grocery store, they come in what looks like a tube. You're going to make this dough using your discard, your sourdough discard, and then you can wrap it up and throw it in your freezer. And whenever guests come over, or whenever you get the feeling for wanting to have some crackers, you literally slice and bake them. It couldn't be easier. And pulling the dough together is very easy too. I also have recipes. I even have rye bread in here. This is an actual sourdough rye bread with caraway seeds. This is lovely and very tasty if you like rye bread. And it's easy to make because you make it in a loaf, a loaf pan. So it's a loaf-shaped bread. I've got flapjacks and waffles. I've got a sourdough discard flatbread. These are so delicious. These just fly off the plate when I make them. You can top them with some extra olive oil and herbs. Scrumptious. Chapter 7 is soaking and sprouting. And basically what I do is I go through on how to soak, brine, and cook dry beans for use in any recipe. This I wanted to be really clear about, and I wanted to include this in the cookbook because I think there was a little confusion when I showed you how to do this in my YouTube video. A lot of people thought that that's how I was serving beans. And they were going, "Oh, that doesn't seem very flavorful." But the whole point of what I was doing was showing you how to prepare any bean just as if you had opened up a can of beans that you were getting ready to use in a recipe, any recipe. Whether it's a soup, or you were going to whirl them and make a white bean hummus, or you were going to use them for some some sort of other recipe that called for beans, whatever the case may be. So I teach you how to properly soak beans and for how long, and how, if you want to take the extra step to sprout them. And why are we doing that? We make them more digestible, and when we make our food more digestible, we absorb the nutrients from it. And we also, through a lot of these soaking and sprouting and culturing, so on and so forth processes, we deactivate some of the substances in food that may inhibit our ability to absorb nutrients. So that's why we go through all of this. And so then I show you how to sprout beans and lentils and whole grains, and that leads you to be able to turn those into sprouted flours and then take those and make sprouted flour baked goods. So if you're fans of things like the Ezekiel breads, you're going to learn how to make those type of sprouted flour breads in this chapter. And then I show you how to make real oat milk. Not that what they sell at the grocery store is not real oat milk. That's not traditional oat milk. Oat milk has been traditionally prepared for hundreds and hundreds of years by the Scottish. And so I share the history of oat milk with you, and I show you how to make real oat milk. And if you have never had real oat milk before, you are in for a treat. It is delicious. And so that's pretty much it. Oh, I have a sprouted spelt cornbread. And I also, I love this one too. I have a sprouted spelt and oats breakfast bread. And again, lots to read. I don't leave you high and dry. I give you plenty of information. I've got, again, lots of cook's notes. You're going to find it very easy to soak and sprout grain. You're going to find it very easy to make sprouted flour. You don't have to worry that any of this is complicated. And then I show you how to make real oatmeal with oat groats, and then how to make, as I shared with you earlier, real oat milk. It's a fermented beverage, actually. So quite different than what's at the grocery store. And then here's your cornbread. Can't have a cookbook without some cornbread. And cornbread made with sprouted spelt flour is really delicious and very easy to digest. And then we've got the breakfast bread. That's wonderful. That is, if you've ever had like an English toasting bread, that's what this is like. But the beauty of this is that it's not just made with white flour, all-purpose or bread flour. It's made with spelt and oats flour that has been sprouted, and it is really nutritious. And boy, you put there's a recipe in here for jam, and you toast this, you put there's also a recipe in here for cultured butter, which we talked about earlier. You toast this, you put your cultured butter on it, and your jam, your homemade jam, it becomes like a very nutritious breakfast. Then chapter 8 is condiments and flavor boosters. This is where I show you how to make raw apple cider vinegar. I show you how to make a nutrient-rich house seasoning, herbal salts, homemade salad dressings, fermented mustards, a homemade mayonnaise that I absolutely love, where I use olive oil and egg. I show you how to make fermented ketchup, a fermented picante, as well as a chunky salsa. I've even got a fermented hot sauce, and this is with a twist. If you make this hot sauce and serve this, people are going to say to you, why is it so tasty? What did you do? I've got a twist for you. And I show you how to make homemade vegetable bouillon 2 ways. And as you'll see, I really want to take a little time and just let you look at this. You'll see how nice the print is. That is something that was so important to me, to make the print very readable. Sometimes I open cookbooks today and the print is really, really small, and I find it very, very hard to read. And especially if it's one of these wonderful, what I call like living books, like Charlotte Mason, the educator, used to say, a living book that had a lot of good information to read, that I want it to be readable, that it's not so small that I'm struggling. So this is, again, I go into a lot of detail with you about making fermented condiments and making flavor boosters and what all is involved and how, it's really very easy. And I talk about shelf stability. I've got the apple cider vinegar here. That's a classic. That's a very popular YouTube video that I have. And it's so easy to make. You can use scraps, you can use apples, a little past their prime. The house seasoning, the sea salts, everything. Here's the homemade mustard. That's so easy to make, and it's a fermented mustard. Here's the mayonnaise. Again, very easy to make. Basically takes a minute. And I think you're going, and here's the hot sauce that I was talking about. These are also relatively easy to make. Whenever you make anything that's fermented, you basically pull it together, in 5 minutes? And then it's the fermentation time that does all the rest of the work. But that's got a great twist. It's got a wonderful flavor. And then here is the homemade vegetable bouillon. You can make a wet version, or you can dry it and have something that's shelf stable. And I make most of these very, very easy for you. You don't need a dehydrator if you don't have one. A lot of these recipes where I dry food can be done right in your oven, nothing fancy. Then chapter 9 are traditional superfoods. And I show you how to make digestive bitters, a roasted bone marrow, a bone marrow gremolata that you can, where you roast the bone marrow, and I love it. It's like steak butter, and you can just spread it on baguettes. But if you're new to eating bone marrow, I show you how to make a bone marrow gremolata where you're mixing it with a lot of herbs and spices, and it's very, very tasty, and you can use it to top something, or just use that as a spread as is. And it's a good way to get bone marrow into your diet. Bone marrow is a nutrient-dense food. And I talk about the difference between nutrient-dense foods and nutrient-rich foods in the book. Nutrient-dense are foods that you only need a small amount, and they're loaded with nutrition. Whereas nutrient-rich foods are often those foods like kale or something, that they're rich in nutrients, but you have to eat a lot of them. If you ever buy a big bunch of kale and it cooks down to like a tablespoon, you have to eat a lot. You have to make a lot of it and eat a lot of it to get all of the nutrients that you want from it. But in any event, bone marrow is a nutrient-dense food. It's wonderful for you. Then I've got the deep-fried beef liver nuggets with fermented ketchup. And then I have herbed kippers and rice. That's a wonderful dish. It's a popular one right here in our kitchen. And super mineral broth, I absolutely love. And then sardines with pickled red onions and citrus chimichurri. If you think you don't like sardines, you're going to love them prepared in this way. And I'll show you, I've got some pictures in here. But again, these are all real nutrient-dense foods. And again, I talk about everything. I talk about the vitamins, the nutrient density of the foods. Here are the bitters. I think I showed you this picture a little earlier. How to make digestive bitters. This is very important to help us absorb the nutrients from our food, to take a little bit before we eat or even after we eat if you tend to be prone to indigestion. But the nice thing about digestive bitters is that they help us absorb the nutrients from our food, and that's very, very important. Here's the super mineral broth. It's wonderful for you. You should get your vitamins and minerals from real food, and it's not difficult to do. And super mineral broth is a wonderful concentrated way to get those minerals into our body. And liquids like that, warm broths, those are very easily assimilated by our digestive system. It's very important. And here are the sardines with the pickled red. I love pickled red onions and the citrus chimichurri. You cannot go wrong. This is so good. You're going to love this. And you some little toasted baguette there. And I'll have to include that in my next cookbook. How to make sourdough baguettes. Then chapter 10 are good bug beverages. I show you how to make Haymaker's Switchel Punch. Also a mojito shrub mocktail. This is very nice. My husband and I don't drink, and so it's really nice to have a collection of recipes, especially if you want to just to enjoy them on a warm day, or if you're having friends and family over for a barbecue or some sort of holiday dinner and you want to have non-alcoholic options, this is a great one. A pineapple mojito shrub mocktail. And then I show you how to make a homemade ginger bug. And what a ginger bug is it's the basis in order to make homemade fermented sodas. And so I start you off, since it's a ginger bug, I start you off with ginger ale. But I explain that this bug, it's a cute name for it, can be used to make other types of fermented sodas. But homemade ginger ale is popular. And this being made with a ginger bug makes it a wonderful probiotic-rich beverage that you don't mind enjoying on occasion. And then I've got beet kvass and a spiced holiday kvass and a rye bread kvass. The beet kvass, once that's made, you can decant that with a lot of different spices, which is what I talk about in the book here, like star anise and cinnamon sticks and so on and so forth. Make it in the summer, put it in the back of your refrigerator after you've decanted it and you've put the spices in it, and then come Christmas time, it is a delightful aperitif, like a before dinner drink that's non-alcoholic, or a digestif, a beverage in a small amount to enjoy after a meal to help with digestion. And they're not difficult to make. It's really the fermentation that's doing everything, and then after you decant it, it's just sitting in your back refrigerator or in your front refrigerator. I have a little refrigerator in my laundry room. I call that the back refrigerator. And you just forget about it until holiday time. And so here are some wonderful pictures, the Haymaker's Punch and the Mojito Mocktail. And let's see what else we've gotten here. Oh yeah, here's the beginnings of the rye bread kvass. You can put in some apples and some raisins, and it's very tasty and very easy to make. Then chapter 11, I go into preserving foods with home canning, and I teach you all about water bath canning. This is a very wonderful and easy place to start if you're new to home canning. And I hold your hand, I walk you through step by step. I show you how to make an old-fashioned Pioneer berry and apple jam. I show you how to make homemade pectin if you want to try your hand at that. I show you how to can fresh fruit with no sugar. You don't need sugar if you don't want to add it. I show you how to home can tomatoes, bread and butter pickles, and pickled red beets and onions. That's always a popular one. And as with every chapter, I give you a lot of information about what we're going to be doing, like a getting started section before we even get started with the recipes. And here's this is how to make jam the real old-fashioned way. That was made long before you could find the store-bought pectin at your local grocery store. So I think you're going to enjoy learning that skill. And in the home canning section, in one of the Cook's Notes sections, I talk about altitude and canning times that will really help you, especially if you are new to this. And then I show you how to make homemade pectin. Not difficult at all. Again, a lot of this, the time is on the part of time, simmering away on your cooktop or whatever the case may be. Here are some nice home canned pears, and just in their own juices, just some water, and we've got canning tomatoes. So you got a little bit of everything. Here are the bread and butter pickles. These are delicious, and they are always a hit. Everyone is going to love your homemade bread and butter pickles. And keep in mind, if you're not ready to dive in right away to home canning, you can make any of this and just pop it in your fridge, and I talk about that. So there's lots to do here. Chapter 12, preserving foods by drying. And I show you how to dry fresh herbs, how to make a shelf-stabled mirepoix. That's where you take onions, carrots, and celery. You chop them up and you dry them. And then you put them in a jar and you have them shelf-stable in your pantry. They are such a time saver whenever you want to make any type of soup, because that's often the base of starting a soup, where you put a little butter, a little oil in your soup pot, and then you put in your onions, your carrots, your celery, you saute those up, and then you go from there. Having this shelf stable in your pantry is fantastic. Then I talk about how to dry your sourdough starter. You don't need anything fancy. You can do this in an oven with the electric light on or the pilot light. And if you spread it really, really, really thin, I've often just left it on my counter and let it air dry. And then you just break that up and you store it in a jar, so you've always got a backup in case anything happens to your main sourdough starter. I show you how to make no-peel garlic powder. Oh, that is a great time saver, because you have to remember the garlic peel has just as much nutrition as the garlic, the actual garlic. There's no need to peel it. So you can just dehydrate the garlic. I do recommend doing that outside. So in that case, it is handy to have a little dehydrator. And often you can find these, especially if you go in the beginning of the year, if people got them for Christmas who weren't interested in them, who weren't necessarily creating traditional foods kitchens like us, you'll often find them at the thrift shops. And you can just plug one outside and you can dry your garlic, and then you pulverize it, and you have this amazing garlic powder, so much better than anything you can buy at the store, and you didn't have to peel it. And then I show you how to dry citrus peel and citrus. That's just wonderful having on hand. And I'll show you the picture. It's just a variety of different ways to do it. And what's wonderful about it is that it's so versatile to be used in baked goods, to make teas with, to make, mulled type ciders that you want to give a citrus flavor to. Anything like that, having dried citrus on hand is wonderful. And then I show you how to dry apple slices. That's kind of fun. That makes you feel very pioneerish. I'll show you the picture. But here I'm drying herbs and then making fresh dried herbs, and then you can just grind them up and you have them in your pantry. You can add them in where I talk about in previous chapters. We make the herb salts. You can use both fresh herbs and dry herbs, so you have options. And then here's making the mirepoix mix to keep in your pantry. This is wonderful. Real time saver. And we've got the garlic that we're going to turn into garlic powder. Oh, and here's the different types of citrus that you can dry. And these are all easy to do. You can do this right in your oven, 1, 2, 3. Same with the apples. And these make wonderful snacks. I think that you'll really enjoy making this. And if you don't want to peel them, you don't have to peel the apples. All you have to do, and some people don't even, they just dry them as is. They don't even take the core out. And then when they go to string them up, they just use like a little needle to kind of just work your way through the dried. And often when you dry apples, if you've ever done this before, you will find that as it dries, there are natural areas where you can push the string through if you want to string them up, as I'm showing here. And they're wonderful to eat. And if you do leave the core in, you just have to kind of eat around it. But that's just a great snack. And then chapter 13, I show you how to make some sweets and treats. And I talk all about baking with whole grain flours and sprouted flours and using whole sweeteners. I show you how to make a perpetual vanilla extract. That's always popular to have on hand. And vanilla beans have come down in price a lot, so it's a lot easier to make homemade. I share with you whole grain cowboy cookies and one of my son's favorite graham crackers, and I look forward to making a video with him where he and I make these together, and we can show you how we make these. But graham crackers, it's really nice to be able to make those homemade. I have an apple pan dowdy. If you're hesitant to make pie crust and an apple pie, maybe you've not done that before and you're just a little hesitant, you will love an apple pan dowdy, because as the name implies, dowdy, means unkept. And that's the beauty of this pie crust. You can't make this wrong. You can't make a mistake. And you just tear it up and put it on top of your pie. Very easy. I've also got a bread pudding in here. This is a sourdough bread pudding. This is something my mother made. And what's great about this bread pudding is it has a lot of eggs in it. You're going to find that it has a lot more eggs. It's great if you have a surplus of eggs. It has a lot more eggs in it than most bread puddings, so it actually makes a terrific nutrient-dense breakfast. Now, if you want to flip it and make a dessert, and it has a savory flavor, if you want to flip it and turn it into a dessert, then I share with you how to make a wonderful creamy vanilla glaze to put on top. And then, of course, got to have sourdough cinnamon rolls. And also, too, I think I didn't mention it back in the home baker section. I also have English muffins for you, sourdough English muffins. And then this is a lot of fun. I have a Pioneer wedding cake. And this is actually really easy to make because the dough is very pliable, and you basically roll it out into what looks like multiple big cookies, and then you bake them, and then you stack them, and then in between you put sort of what's like the equivalent of a chunky apple, a very chunky applesauce, but you can use your dried apples to make this. See, that's why I like a lot of the recipes are very related to one another. So a lot of things you make early on in the book, you're going to use for recipes later in the book. In chapter 14, I wrap up with some recipes that you can use, some of the things that you've already made in the book, to help you pull these meals together. But basically what I've done here is to just give you a group of traditional foods comfort meals. So these are tried and true meals that are made in the traditional way, not ways that have been like very modernized that don't benefit our nutrition. But they're made very traditionally and very deliciously, I hope. And the recipes that I include are a spatchcock chicken. That's basically a riff, so to speak, on your whole roast chicken, where I show you how to cut out the backbone, flatten it, and then roast it in your oven, and it goes very quick. So that's a good way to have a roast chicken during the week if you're in a rush. I also show you how to make a cast iron skillet Texas tamale pie with sourdough cornmeal topping. And what are we using in that sourdough cornmeal topping? Our sourdough discard. Next, I've got a budget-friendly southwestern chili con carne, and that is a great recipe where we increase the nutrient density of it by sneaking in a little beef liver that no one's going to notice. And you can even sneak in whatever organ meat you have on hand. And it's just, chili is a great way to add a lot of nutrient-dense foods to your diet. Then I have a pan-fried breaded whitefish. That's one of my husband and son's favorites. And we use our homemade mayonnaise and also some of our pickles that we fermented earlier, if you want, to make a homemade tartar sauce. And then finally, I've got a sheet pan baked salmon with a maple sugar glaze and roasted vegetables. That's scrumptious. And that's great if, like, during the summer when salmon is in season and you can get a nice side of salmon from your fishmonger. And I'll show you some of the pictures. Some of them are a little small here, but this is the spatchcock chicken. We've got a little bit of the tamale pie down there. And let me see if you saw that one, the tamale pie. And let's see, there's really some lovely pictures in here. Here's the chili con carne. This is one of my favorites. This is a true traditionally made chili con carne. You're going to love this recipe. And let's see, oh, here's the fish. A favorite of my husband and son. Can't be beat with homemade tartar sauce, especially with your homemade mayo. And then here is this glorious salmon. Look at that. That is quite something. That's a delicious meal and very easy to make. So I hope that you have enjoyed this tour of the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, and I hope that this has helped you learn more about what I specifically have in here and the traditional foods journey that I'm taking you on. So when ordering my cookbook on Amazon, many of you have seen this offering for a spiral-bound copy of my cookbook. So what exactly is that all about? Now, something I need to share with you is this is not authorized by my publisher, so I can't 100% guarantee the quality. But when I saw it, I mentioned it to my sweet friend Michelle. I think many of you know her. She has the YouTube channel, Chocolate Box Cottage, and she told me that she had ordered various cookbooks that were offering spiral bound, and she was impressed with the quality. So I went ahead and ordered mine with the spiral bound. Now, what exactly is this all about? There are services that will buy cookbooks that are hardbacks like this, and then they will create them in this spiral bound option. So this is not created by my publisher. This is created by a third party. Now, I will say that this particular copy that I ordered was done very well. I have no complaints. They did a very nice job. You can see all the text. Nothing's been cut off that would have made it difficult to follow the recipes. They did a lovely job. So at least for the copy that I have, I can say that it is done very well. But again, I can't 100% guarantee the quality, so you may want to primarily consider buying the actual hard copy of my book, because something you also want to keep in mind is that this spiral bound copy is more expensive. So those are two things you want to keep in mind. Number one, I can't guarantee the quality because this was not produced by my publisher. The actual cookbook was, as I said, this service purchases the actual cookbook. However, I can't guarantee the spiral bounding. So something for you to know, that when you come across this on Amazon, it is actually my cookbook. It's just the spiral bounding was done by a third party. The next thing I want to talk to you about is this curriculum, which I'm so proud of. I created this curriculum in conjunction with a lovely woman named Jamie O'Hara. She's an experienced educator and a curriculum developer, so it's truly top-notch. And this Modern Pioneer Cookbook curriculum goes along with my Modern Pioneer Cookbook. And this is perfect for teaching children in grades K through 12 how to become traditional foods cooks. And this is over 250 pages long. It's very detailed. You can download it for free at my website, marysnest.com. I'll put a link in the description below as well as in the pinned comment. And you don't need to put your email in. You can download as many copies as you want, print them out, whatever way you want to work with the curriculum. I printed mine out and I put it into a binder to make it very easy to work with. But whatever works best for you, you could have it on your iPad, your phone. It's going to be very useful. And you can use this if you're homeschooling, if you're a parent whose children go to school outside the home, but you want to teach them on weekends or over the summer. You can create a community program where you teach a group of children. These are going to be skills that are going to be so helpful to them. These are the type of skills that these never go out of fashion and they never change. These are traditional cooking skills. So once they have these under their belt, they have them under their belt forever. I have another video where I go into what this curriculum contains, and I will be sure to link to that video in the description as well as the pinned comment. But just a quick overview is that this curriculum is broken into 14 chapters, each of which goes along with the 14 chapters in my cookbook. And then each chapter is broken into 3 lesson plans. One for grades K through 4, one for grades 5 through 8, and then one for grades 9 through 12. However, they all work beautifully together if you're educating multiple ages at the same time. The good news is this curriculum allows you to get everybody in the kitchen cooking traditional foods, everybody having a different job to do, different little assignments, because it covers a little bit of everything: math, science, history, geography, culture, creative writing. You get a little bit of everything, and learning these things while learning how to make traditional foods brings learning alive. And this is the type of thing that at the end of the day, even if maybe one day this is the type of program that's taught in, as we say, brick and mortar schools, the schools outside the home, maybe if they bring back home economics, when your children come home from school, you know, when you often say, "Oh, what did you learn today?" "Oh, nothing." This is the type of thing that they're going to go, "Oh my gosh, Mom, we roasted a whole chicken," or "Oh, we made yogurt," or this, that, and the other thing. I remember one of the most, it's kind of funny, but one of my significant memories from elementary school was when our 2nd grade teacher taught us how to make butter. And I remember that to this day. So please know that you can go over to my website, download this, it's free, share this with family and friends, share this with your neighbors, or anyone who has children or grandchildren, nieces or nephews, or as I said, starting a community program. Teach, teach, teach. We need to preserve these skills, and we need to teach younger generations how to make these foods so that these skills are not lost, and so that younger generations can be self-sufficient in the kitchen. Now, in a minute, I want to talk about some of the other things you may see floating around on the internet to do with my cookbook. But before we get to that, the first thing I want to say is I just want to give you a really big thank you to those of you who have already purchased my book, as well as to those of you who have left me the amazing 5-star comments. I cannot get over how happy you are with this book, and that brings me a lot of joy because I put my heart and soul into creating this for you. I really wanted you to have a manual that you could have on your kitchen bookshelf that would be able to walk you through step by step by step on how to create a traditional foods kitchen. And I feel that based on reading all of your wonderful comments and reviews that you've been leaving me, that I've accomplished that goal. And so that brings me a lot of joy. So thank you very much. And if you've not had a copy, but you're thinking about purchasing a copy, this is a great time to do it. I've seen that this is on sale at a number of places online, so definitely check that out. I'll have a link to where you can find my cookbook online in the description, as well as in the pinned comment. And it should also be on the shelves of pretty much every large bookstore or book retailer in the United States. But also, when you look at that link that will show you where to order my book online, it is also available internationally. Now, an important thing that I wanted to share with you is that there are a lot of things floating around on the internet. You may see them for sale online, specifically maybe on Amazon, where you'll see something that'll say the Modern Pioneer Cookbook Workbook. And it's implying that it is based on my cookbook and my name, and with information about me. Those are unauthorized. There's about 3 so far that I've seen, but those are unauthorized, and they're of very low quality, and most of the information in them is incorrect. Basically, they're just a lot of junk. So I hope that if you see those for sale online, you will avoid them, because I know some of you have shared with me that you thought that those were things that I had produced and you purchased them, and when you got them, you saw what junk they were. And luckily, I was happy that you were able to return them and get your money back, so that was good news. But yes, anything that you see that is not what I'm showing you here, the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, is nothing that I created. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tour of my new book, the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, as well as updates about my curriculum, as well as the spiral-bound copy of this book. So if you've not had a chance to get the cookbook yet, I hope you'll add it to your wish list. And in the meantime, be sure to click on this video over here, where I have a whole host of information about becoming a traditional foods cook. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.